Good afternoon, all. Christopher Coffey, afternoon to you, sir. Margaret Thomas, hi, Margaret. Daniela Williams, good afternoon to you. Slimy Show, greetings. Hyacinth Richardson, Michelle Nero, good afternoon to all of you guys. Neil Francois, always present, greetings. Sarah Richards. Pokey Gal, good afternoon to you. Kathy Ann Best. Heather Lee, good afternoon. Claudette Jeffrey, Sharon Williams. Randon Pear, good afternoon to you. Slimy Show says the government just sold a piece of Tobago to the US government. The whole of Tobago they sell. Never a dull moment to these people, eh? Never a dull moment. Leon Joseph, good afternoon to you. Pauline Buckmeyer, Carol Guevara, Judy King. Ada, what is that? Ada Ven Nurse, is it? Oh, yeah. Or Davi Nurse, right. Philomen Green. Jennifer Ashby Okoli, good afternoon. Sedana Kwashi, Big Trini for Life. Patricia Batiste, Natalie F. Sadiqa O'Brien, good afternoon to all of you guys. Let's see what she says here. All right, so I jump in on because I had to jump off at 3:30 this afternoon because I have an important Zoom call to jump on. And I had intended to start earlier today, but yeah, I'm traveling tomorrow and my Sunday got messed up a little bit. Marlene Pantin, Angela Barrington, Dexter tweets, good afternoon. MP for Tobago East David Thomas has described the recent installation of a radar system at the ANR Robinson International Airport as necessary, insisting there is no cause for alarm. Of course, he would say that. On the government side, we have 26 UNC members of government and two rubber stamps, as they say. So it doesn't matter. I don't know if it is these two gentlemen got instructions from Fali. Go along with whatever the government says. All right? And citizens are concerned about what they're seeing with the installation of this radar and the lack of forthrightness from the Prime Minister, who told us the Marines came to fix roads and fix schools and fix the runway. And then we hear, well, I couldn't tell you all about the radar system. I had to keep it secret because we didn't want the narco traffickers to find out about it. So apparently this radar system was supposed to be invisible, cloak of invisibility from Harry Potter, so nobody would see it. I do understand how you could keep it secret, and people who are accustomed, who live in Tobago, seeing this thing that wasn't there before, no mention of it, and then it just appeared after they saw these huge US Navy planes landing and taking off. People from Tobago were doing lives talking about the amount of noise that these planes were making because they're so huge. People must have seen, and this is why these things are being done under cover of darkness, but somebody must have seen. I went to bed last night and I didn't see this thing. I hear a big plane and then I wake up this morning and there is this thing. What is that? People would have asked questions. So how long did the Prime Minister think she would be able to remain tight-lipped, according to her? But anyway, let me jump into it. So let me get this here. So we saw the outcome of the elections in St. Vincent and the Grenadine. So yellow is the code. So they have triumphed over there. And despite the claims by members of our government that they had nothing to do with it, they did not interfere, they were not involved in the election in any way. We saw several UNC operatives across St. Vincent and the Grenadines, aside from what was being done at home here in Trinidad by people like the likes of Anil Roberts and the Underground Report and others, right? There are people over there, of course, sitting UNC councillor, Jean-Michael Alibukas Macamillion, who has time to be in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, be in St. Lucia, participating in their campaign. Meanwhile, in his district in San Fernando, pile up a garbage, and his Burgesses are doing videos and asking what's going on and showing you videos of the pile of garbage in his district, right? That has been there for how many days, and their councillor is nowhere to be found to treat with it. Rats and all sorts of things, and he is nowhere to be found. Why? Because he is carrying out the mandate that he got. He was given directives, and he was carrying out his directives over there. So we saw the shellacking that the ULP would have gotten, 14-1, reminiscent of what happened in Tobago almost 4 years ago. So Ralph Gonsalves is now the only member of parliament for the ULP after 25 years as prime minister. So it's just 3 members of his party, himself and the 2 senators who he will appoint as leader of the opposition. But yet still, Andy Roberts continues his assault on Mr. Gonsalves, calling him, he did a doubles and coffee, telling him he was a 5-star general and now he's a lone star general, and you should have never heard Buju. You should have never heard Buju. So Kamla is Buju now. All right? So he has indirectly or directly admitted to their involvement in that election, that all of this talk about Victoria Keys and the purchase of 3 apartments and so on really had nothing to do with concern for Trinidad and Tobago citizens who have been on the list for the longest while and haven't been able to get a home, but more to interfere because you realize the election is done, and all of a sudden the UNC and their supporters no longer care about the 3 apartments in Victoria Keys. They were calling before for Gonsalves to pay up the money or give back the apartments. Mission accomplished. So they don't need that again. No need to bother with him. All right. On to St. Lucia, which I think their election is tomorrow. And so they're looking for yellow is the code over there as well. And they're talking about Kamla Persad-Bissessar started a revolution across the Caribbean, and yellow is the code is sweeping the Caribbean and all of that. So I'm going to play this goodly gentleman for you all.
Allowed America entry into the Caribbean waters. Entry into the Caribbean.
Okay. This, where is it?
No.
So, give me 1 sec, folks. Let me pull this up. All right.
Morning. Well, they have this thing called manifestation. They have this thing called call it as it is, and so it will be. I want to remind you, you go back and check my videos during the campaign leading up to April 28, 2025. I told people this coalition of interest going and win seats all up in St. Lucia, Grenada, Antigua. I tell you all, look what happened last night. Today is Good Friday in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They have a new prime minister. We sweep the red away. Kamla, take the song. It's sweeping time. Kamla sweeping the whole Caribbean. The yellow is the cold fever, infectious. Every citizen of the Caribbean, of CARICOM, seeing the changes that the people of Trinidad and Tobago are benefiting from now that we chase those P&M red rats out of town. And they want that for themselves and their children. Yellow is the code. When UNC wins, everybody wins. We fixing it. 7 months of keeping our promises. The people of this country are seeing it. But more importantly, the whole Caribbean seeing it. Kamla Persad-Bissessar has changed the face and the whole feeling of the Caribbean. Take a look at what is going on. Yellow is the code. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. It is a lovely day to be in the Caribbean, to be from the Caribbean today. Stay safe, all of you.
Right. So that there is Minister in the Ministry of Housing, Philip Edward Alexander, speaking to you there from the comfort of his brand new $1 million Prado Land Cruiser, purchased courtesy or thanks to the votes or the non-votes of you guys out there right, who assisted in putting the UNC into power. This man who draws over $70,000 a month as a salary for doing absolutely nothing. Now, when he was making that video, it was on his way to Westmall. I know that because I too was in Westmall on Friday morning prior to heading to the Parliament to do the people's work. All right, and while I was there, I saw him pull up. He went into the mall. So he wasn't dressed for work. He was in a PEP jumpsuit or a tracksuit, sorry. So clearly the Ministry of Housing didn't have any work for him to do on Friday. And this was about probably after 11 minutes to 12. Yeah, he had no work to do, so he could afford to go in the mall and shop and sightsee or whatever it is he was doing there, right? But as I said, in his brand new Prado Land Cruiser, which he couldn't afford before, because he was driving this old beat out Hilux, but now he can afford it. Yeah. Meanwhile, the 50, 60,000 plus of you all who are unemployed, who will not be dreaming of a bright Christmas or a happy New Year, right? Thanks to the government of which he is a part. So you're heading into Christmas, which is less than a month away. You have no idea what Christmas morning is going to look like unless you're expecting a Christmas miracle. But he doesn't have that problem, all right? Because his circumstances, lot is much, much better this year than it was for the same time last year, when he had no prospects of being a government minister until April the 28th, when some of you all decided to play mad. Or as Mr. Manning would have said, play fast and loose with your votes. All right? But hearing nonsense he's talking about it, Kamla Prasad, Sessa, and all that they did, and again, taking credit for what happened in St. Vincent and Grenadines, whatever contribution they would have made, the operatives they were on the ground, who knows if it is they sent money across there. I don't know what else was involved, what they did, but he's there talking about they and what they did. And they swept how many seats and all of that. So we will see what will happen tomorrow. But just to put that out there, right? Waste our time collecting taxpayers' money and referring to PNM as red rats. There's a disrespect that he continues to show to the supporters of the People's National Movement, many of whom pay taxes, whose tax dollars contribute to paying him the $70,000 a month that he enjoys, plus all of the other perks that come with being a member of parliament and a minister of government, which it seems to include having no work to do as a junior minister in a ministry that probably doesn't even need one minister. I don't really see David Lee has much work to do either, but you have three. So he and the next one, the bald-headed buffoon, right? That loudmouth rumcock, that's all they have time to do is to go on social media and cuss out people and see the worst of things about PNM. Seemingly, they did not get the memo that they are ministers of the government. This is not, you're a member of the opposition. You are a minister of government. You were appointed, not elected. You were appointed, unfortunately, to do the work of the people, all citizens. And I keep reminding these clowns, you all took an oath of office, right? As ministers, first of all, without fear or favor, affection, or ill will. Okay? To do right by everybody, regardless of their political affiliation. So maybe if you're a member of the opposition, all right, we could excuse you because Roberts was doing it and when they were in opposition. Fine. Now that you are in government and you have control of the public purse, you are expected to discharge your duties and to utilize the resources of state for the benefit of all citizens, not just for those who belong to the party that you are a member of. Which means that you need to hold up on the rhetoric about who is red rat and flock of Kobo and, or as Naked called PNM supporters, rabid dogs. And the leader, I'm sure she hears these things, but it doesn't matter to her. There seems to be no reprimand. So they feel free, emboldened to continue to do it as they please, right? And instigate and have the supporters of the UNC doing the very same thing. I mean, you all have won the election. It's been 7 months and it's like, I don't know, like you all didn't get that memo as yet. You're all behaving as if you're still in opposition. And then want to talk about us? Well, it can't be serious. Cannot be serious. So just wanted to put that out there, right? They're claiming We didn't know that. We had no part of that. We didn't interfere. We weren't involved. And then after the fact, you come in and say, well, take credit for it. No problem. I imagine there'll be more videos like this depending on the outcome of tomorrow's election in St. Lucia. So let's keep an eye on that. So there was an article that I saw a couple of days ago which had me very concerned. This is a government that knows that they are unpopular. In just 7 months, their popularity has significantly waned, and they will do everything and anything to stay in power. And some people may have in the, with all these issues about the radar and the prime minister's supposed dishonesty, there are certain things we would have missed. And this article was published yesterday. Municipal Boundaries Committee appointed. Minister Amin says boundary reform key to representation. I don't know how many of you all follow US news to the T, to the letter. But over the last couple of months, there was a lot of talk and a lot of concern in the United States, particularly on the part of the Democrats with respect to something called redistricting, which Republicans are undertaking in states that are controlled by a Republican legislature, where they are seeking to redraw the boundary lines so that they could favor Republicans in elections. And when I read this, and you all know I always say, it seems that this government governs by Fox News, right? Governance by Fox News. So they sit down and they look at Fox News and see what is happening up north, and then they probably take their cue from there. And so it reads, government has taken the first steps towards ensuring the population receives equitable service from municipal bodies by establishing a committee to review and recommend changes to electoral boundaries. Now, I always thought that was the role and function of the EBC, who from time to time would engage in such an exercise. And when it was done in the past under the PNM by the EBC, the UNC were always suspicious and raised issues and accused the last PNM administration of wanting to engage in voter padding, and they're trying to gerrymander the boundary lines to favor them. Every time, even up until earlier this year, right? When, I think it was earlier this year or late last year, where the latest report of the EBC with respect to boundary lines and so on, and the UNC was up in arms, and they wanted the government to bring the report to the Parliament, and they were threatening to take the government to court or the EBC to court if the report wasn't laid. So it goes on to say, Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, Khadija Amin, distributed letters of appointment to 11 members of the committee for review and recommendations of boundaries on Friday. It is Trinidad and Tobago. While our municipalities cover Trinidad, it is important to have the Tobago perspective, so I am pleased to welcome attorney at law, my sister Chrislyn Moore, to the committee. Look who you put on this committee, Chrislyn Moore. Chrislyn Moore, who is known to be affiliated with the TPP in Tobago. I think she was given a board position by the current THA administration. Chrislyn Moore, who was a minister in the People's Partnership government between 2010 to 2015, at one point in time, she served a short stint at Kobo Sweat as the Minister of Justice. She had affiliations with the then the Tobago Organization of the People or something like that, right? So she has well-known affiliations to the UNC. And you put together this committee that is supposed to look at the boundaries for the various electoral districts and make recommendations. And rather than put a committee that comprises, or at least appears to be, independent, you put in people like Chrislyn Moore, a known affiliate of the UNC, to be a part of this committee. And we're supposed to have confidence in that, right? She goes on to say, what the data proves to us is that there is a huge disparity in electoral representation with the current configuration. Which data says that? What study did you all do? Which report did you refer to? And was that report laid in the Parliament? Minister Amin explained that under the current configuration, one councillor represents 3,800 people, while another represents 14,341. Would have been nice if you could have tell us which councillors are those, which districts they're from, so that we could look at the particular constituency and see the makeup, how many districts there may be in that particular constituency. All right? And then we could determine, okay, maybe that 3,800 is valid. Rather than you come and you present arbitrary numbers like that to support your case without supporting evidence. You didn't call the district, you didn't call the name of the councillors, you didn't reference where you got that information from, but you put that out there because that is sufficient for the members of the Foley Dons to run with. She then goes on, we have such disparity that we have an area of 12 kilometers being serviced by one municipality, and an area such as Sangre Grande, which is the largest municipality, being 927 square kilometers. You understand the disparity and the need for equity? And how much of that 927 square kilometers, Madam Minister, has a significant amount of persons living there? And rather, how much of that 927 square kilometers has nobody living there? Which means that your argument is complete rubbish. How many? Tell us. Of that 927, right? How many people live in each square kilometer? So you probably have acres and acres of land. Nobody living there, right? Just bush. But that, again, this is how she tries to defend this. The minister said the matter requires urgent attention. They never spoke about this during the elections, right? Election campaign, no talk about that. It wasn't urgent then, but all of a sudden, in the last 7 months, it has become urgent. It is very clear that we must take a critical view of the boundaries. We must consider the geographic issues, the type of region where we have the rural areas, the coastal areas. We have developing town centers and our development objectives as a government. We must consider where the population has grown significantly that requires additional focus. Minister Amin said the exercise will inform funding to municipal corporations. So they are now encroaching on the work of the EBC. This is something, as I said before, the EBC is normally responsible for. Bearing in mind the fact that we have a local government election that is constitutionally due in 2027, and a government that knows that they're very unpopular and cannot afford to lose that local government election because it would not bode well for them going forward. If we recall what happened 2010 to 2015, they came in 2010 with a significant mandate as they received in 2025. They went on a couple months later to have the local government election in which they were able to arrest 11 of the 14 corporations. Yeah, so they were having a good year in 2010. And then just 3 years later, they had another local government election where they would have lost, I think, 6 of those corporations to the PNM. Right? And it just went downhill for them after that because they realized how popular they were and they weren't able to regain footing. Later on that year in 2013, they would have had the by-election in Chaguanas West, which Jack Warner and the ILP won. Then they had the by-election in St. Joseph, which the PNM won under Terence Dayal Singh. Right? So it wasn't good for them. But they are now putting together a committee, clearly the members of which who are now tasked with the responsibility to review the current boundary lines and make recommendations, I suppose. In whose favor? Is there anybody on that committee who is affiliated with the PNM? Who could be a check and balance to say, well, hey, you see what they're doing there? That is not correct. Let us take note of the fact that the EBC would have reviewed and made changes to certain boundaries for the purpose of the constituency, not the electoral district. In fact, in the last local government election, I think they added 3 new districts, all of which were won by the UNC. After they complained bitterly, oh, they added 3 more districts because they want to favor the PNM, and Fern Narciscope is Maxi Coffee niece, and she's this one cousin, and this one sister-in-law. The amount of different familial links that they made with Fern Narciscope, the chief elections officer, and people in the PNM. Right? She related to everybody in the PNM in a different way. And they had all sorts of concerns. And then the election came and they won all 3 of these new districts and they had no issues with the EBC. They were too happy, right? No issues. The same EBC that corrupt. Every time they lose an election, the EBC corrupt, the EBC thief the election, the EBC did this and that. But they had no issues with the EBC on April 28th. The same Fern Narciscope, who is the chief elections officer, she would have presided over the election on the 28th of April. No problems with her. Everything was above board. That was the best election we ever had because they won. Take note of the difference that when the PNM loses, we didn't say it's because the EBC thief. We didn't say that they gerrymandered. We didn't say it's because rainfall. We made no excuses. We accepted the loss, right? Subsequent to that, members of the leadership of the party would have taken responsibility and espoused a number of reasons as to why we lost. And none of it had to do with anything that the EBC did. Right? Just take note of that. But we lost San Fernando West. Yes. The EBC moved 2 polling divisions that were heavily weighted to the UNC from San Fernando East and put them in San Fernando West. Faris Al-Rawi lost his seat by just over 600 votes. 600 votes, right? So now, and this is the thing that bothers me, where are the men and women of letters who are supposed to be looking at these things, who love to write in the newspapers for everything, every move that the PNM made under the last administration for the last 10 years? They had a comment, writing opinions, letters to the editor. All of a sudden, all of them gone quiet. All who are saying the PNM need a rest, the PNM need to take a rest, they need a 5 years in opposition to wheel and come again. In 7 months, look at everything that has happened. Where are these people? Where are you all? You all were so vocal in the last 10 years and now you seem to have disappeared. So you're happy, you're pleased with what is currently taking place in the country? No comments. You're not concerned about the radar in Tobago and how it reached there and what was told to us, right? That the Prime Minister is just the same way that the Prime Minister was between 2010 to 2015. Never informed. I am advised. Now the tune has changed to not to my knowledge, not to my knowing. I am not aware. I will have to inquire. I will have to find out. She is the head of the National Security Council. It is clear that Mrs. Posabi-Sessa did not know what was going on. All right, or if she did, and this cock and bull story that she came and gave us, that she think the Marines left, as far as she's aware, as far as she knows they left, and now they come, she's not sure. Then we heard that they are there to fix roads, just as when the Gravely, the SS Gravely came the other day. But we were told that they were going, Jolene John, when the media questioned her outside Parliament and she was on her way in and they asked her about the Gravely and she said, well, they're here to fix schools and they're going to fix roads. And how many schools did the men and women who are aboard the Gravely fix? I heard about one school called some Benlamon school or something like that, which they were doing something down there. How many roads did they fix in Trinidad? But anyway, let me just wrap up this issue with this report, right? I have grave concerns about this committee that has been tasked with this responsibility. I have grave concerns about who constitutes this committee and what their motives are, what their instructions are, and what their mandate is in respect of looking at boundaries. I am not satisfied or convinced based on the explanation given by the minister for the establishment of this committee and the work that they are being given to do. How does this impact the EBC? Is the EBC obligated to accept any recommendations of this committee with respect to changing the boundary lines? Which constituencies are you focusing on? Which corporations? The ones that are currently under the control of the PNM that for years has been too difficult for you all to rest? And just remember what they did 2010 to 2015, right? When they said they were having consultations on constitutional reform. And what we ended up with, y'all remember? Runoff. They came with runoff, and then they gerrymandered the system by which aldermen, by which political parties would get aldermen, and they changed it to where if you get, I think it's 25% or more of the vote, your party would be assigned an alderman. That's what they did between 2010 to 2015, and that allowed them to be able to get aldermen in corporations that the PNM would normally dominate and in which they would never have had representation. But you don't see a similar thing taking place in the UNC corporations where the PNM would struggle to get even 10% of the vote. So whilst they may have a presence and have aldermen in a couple of the PNM-controlled constituent corporations, the majority of UNC-controlled corporations has no PNM representation. None. Because when you look at the population or the number of persons who vote for the PNM in these areas, it is very, very small. And those who are minded to vote in a local government election. So the PNM always struggles. But they came up with this ingenious plan and strategy to change the way that aldermen are appointed so that it could benefit them. But they always accuse the PNM of tampering with the EBC and the country's electoral process. But if the PNM had done this in the last 10 years, all hell would have break loose. You would have heard, Kamla, we're going and we will take the government to court, and this is unconstitutional. And all the lawyers would have been waiting to run to the courthouse to challenge this. But unfortunately, on our side, who wouldn't challenge it? Who wouldn't challenge it? Where is the clamoring to challenge it? Take it to court. It is clear what they intend to do here, right? They learned the lesson from 2010 to 2015, and they cannot afford a loss in 2027. So by any means necessary, because they know the CPEP and URP workers and the forestry workers and all of them who out of work, the URP workers who still waiting to get their last pay how many months now and haven't gotten it. And when we asked the question last week of Ms. Amin, she mentioned something about they have to do an audit and so on. And so these people just basically have to wait. We asked them for a timeline, couldn't give us the timeline. So whenever, if this audit takes a year, 2 years, 3 years, they just have to wait. In the meantime, go and see if they could find a work somewhere, right? They know that these people are waiting patiently. Some of them who didn't vote in the last election, but who perhaps still supported the Yellow is the Code, and who have been out of work for the last few months, who right now always looking through social media and wherever it is they can to see where they having Christmas parties for children, these little children treat parties where Santa Claus will come. Yesterday I was passing by one hardware in my constituency, and I saw all these people there with children, and I wondering what is this? What are they giving away? And then I saw a gentleman in a Santa suit, right, handing out gifts. And perhaps so many of these children, of these persons who have lost their jobs, that's the only gifts they're going to get for Christmas, because the priority for mommy and daddy, whatever little money they get, is to put food on the table, all right, and maybe pay some utility bills. I keep getting calls all the time about people whose debts are backing up. How much barbecue I bought yesterday from people who hosting barbecue to raise money to pay bills, former CPEP and URP workers and so on. Some of them from former monthly paid staff from URP and all of that, having barbecue, curry queue. I can't eat all of that. I don't want to eat all of that. I don't want to put back on no such a weight, but I buy it. I don't go for it. I just patronize and support because I know they need the support. But this is something ongoing. It's practically every weekend. I get calls from people. MP, having a barbecue. You could support. How many tickets you want? Every weekend. How did these people end up there? Because of this caring, loving, benevolent government of Kamla Persad-Bissessar. All right? And since you know you've fallen out of favor with these people, well, what's the alternative? Let us gerrymander the boundary lines so that we could secure a victory. All right? And we warned you all. We warned you all. I told you all. And that's last election gone there. I think we only have about maybe 3 of the 13 seats that we won. Only about 3 we could say are solid PNM seats. The other 10 seats have more or less been reduced to marginal seats. The UNC has no such issues, no such concerns, because in their stronghold seats, those are stronghold seats. And even when the PNM has the upper hand, UNC stronghold seats remain stronghold seats. PNM, we can't boast of the same, right? And that is why they could confidently go into an election, and we, on the other hand, always have to be biting our nails down to the last. Down to the last. Because PNM supporters, we always held a higher standard. And when you're upset with your party, how your party is performing, you don't vote. UNC supporters could be how vexed with Kamla, they how vexed with the UNC. When the election bell is rung, they know what is important and they go out and vote. And we will cuss her afterwards, but we need to get rid of the PNM. They're not withholding their votes. And again, one needs only to look over the years, just look at the amount of votes that UNC MPs would get in their respective constituencies. And if you have a variance of maybe 500 to 1,000, that's about it. But they know they have a solid base. We can't make the same claim. We cannot. But then when you have outcomes like what happened on April 28th, and things go south in 7 months or less, everybody vexed with us. We find Olen doing enough, and Olen talking enough, and Olen need to do this, and why we not hearing from Olen that, and Olen supposed. They know everything that the 13 of us supposed to do now, right? All of this could have been avoided when we told you all what was going to happen. Everything, that video that was circulating the other day, every single thing that Stuart told you all would have happened if the UNC won has happened. He told you they were going to come for CPEP first, and they did. He told you they were going to come for URP, and they did. He told you they were going to come for forestry, and they did. And he told you about HTC, and he told you about WASA, and they did just that. Told you all about it. Now you find yourself in this situation. There is nothing that we can do because the only person who could call an election is the Prime Minister, right? So all who keep asking me, it had nothing all I could do to get these people out. No, there is nothing that we could do, right? We are not Imam Yassim Abu Bakr and the Jamaat al-Muslimin. We are not going to hold any coup. All right? We abide by the tenets of democracy. We were voted out of office. We are in opposition. The Constitution says that we are required to stay there for a minimum of 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days. And given that this government is inclined to remain there for every last day, that is what it is. So no, all we could do is agitate. We are under a state of emergency. We cannot call any protest. We cannot organize any protest to bring people out. And then the guard and emergency branch come out, the riot police comes, and they start to put licks on people. People get a head bust, and then all they want to blame us. So we cannot do that either. So the best we could do, the press conferences that we've been hosting, but it's just so many issues. If we had to address every single issue, we would have to call a press conference every single day. That's not making any sense. When we go to the parliament and we try to raise questions, again, it is up to the discretion of the speaker to decide which questions he will allow and which ones he will not allow. All right, so we don't even have control there. So if you all think that we are not being active enough or forceful enough, there is only so much we could do. Because there are even persons who support the PNM who, when we try to agitate, they say, well, only the people only there for 7 months. Oh gosh, or they take it down now. Or go now all here. All right. People from our own camp telling us that, right? Take it down. There's only 7 months there. Give the people a chance. Let me see what. You know, it's like some people who will, they stand in the middle of the road and they see a car oncoming and telling themselves, nah, they ain't gonna hit my man. They may want to get locked up. They want to make a jail. They ain't gonna bounce, man. And they come at you at 180 kilometers per hour. And you end up on top of a light pole and still saying, nah, they will make a mistake. They didn't see me. All kind of excuses. That's how the UNC operating right now, right? So I'm just saying, be concerned. Because as the minister said, this requires urgent attention. Urgent. So it means that this team has been given a mandate to go and start your work one time. Start looking at the boundaries one time and making your recommendations, because we have just about 2 years or less than 2 years in order to call this local government election. All right. So you need to finish your work and submit your report to the EBC for the EBC to do what needs to be done, so that by the time the election comes around, what needs to be in place is in place. Okay? A word to the wise is sufficient. But these are the things that you all should be clamoring about. Call any radio station and speak about these things. Do just expect us, the 13, because we are just 13. We have work to do in our constituencies on top of what we do in the parliament, and then having to agitate outside as well. So when people are upset with me, in fact, a young lady came to my office on Thursday for constituency office day, and she came specifically to see me for that. She didn't come asking for anything. She didn't want a job. She has a job. She didn't want a food card. She didn't want anything like that. She came to tell me, you are my MP, and I want to see, I'm here to tell you that I have some concerns, and I don't think that you all are being forceful enough, and I don't think you are agitating enough for certain things, and I find a little quiet, and we want to see you all do more of this and more. I took copious notes of everything that the young lady said, and she looked like she could have been about 26, 27. right? And she's saying, you're not looking attractive to the young people right now based on everything that is happening in the country. And we just find you're not talking enough about it with this thing with Venezuela and all of that. So you're like, we didn't put ourselves in this position. I'm just saying that, right? We didn't do that. And now some of the very people who put us here want to put pressure on us to do things that really and truly we should not have had to do because we should have been in government. Right. So let me see here. So last week, Wednesday, we had a debate on the stand your ground legislation, the much touted, the much anticipated stand your ground legislation. All right, and the PNM would have voted no. And there has been much talk, much chatter. In fact, we saw all the memes going around claiming that the PNM, we defending criminals, we supporting the criminal element. Most of the criminals who committed the home invasions, that they are PNM, and that's why we voted no, because we're trying to protect them and all of that. And I don't know how anybody who would have listened to that debate could have come to that conclusion that that is why we would have voted no. If you listen to the debate and all of our speakers, you would have heard them say the issue they had, we have a problem with the bill as is, not necessarily with the concept of a stand your ground bill or stand your ground legislation. We understand that there is utility in that type of legislation because it exists in jurisdictions all over the place, all over. And we would have seen an upsurge in home invasions within the last couple of months or so, which even further reinforces. But our view is, based on looking at the legislation, which many of the commenters and commentators and armchair analysts who have not read the bill, who have no idea what's in the bill, but they consider themselves to be subject matter experts, to criticize us. And there were certain issues that we raised in respect of this bill. Now, I didn't get the opportunity to contribute, and I was well prepared so to do, but unfortunately, the Attorney General, after I think about 9 or so of our speakers had made their contributions, and the Attorney General was ready to wrap up. It was about 11:30 in the night, and he got up to wind up the debate. Right, so I missed my opportunity, but this was a bill that I had been anticipating for quite some time, because there was quite a bit I wanted to see on this piece of legislation. So I would make my submissions here. All right. Now, contrary to what or how this bill has been sold, marketed, promoted to the population, load up the matic, pull it back, knock it on them and knock it again, empty the clip, reload and empty it again, light them up. You see all that rhetoric that Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar used when she was leader of the opposition to introduce, promote, market, and sell this legislation to you all? This legislation does not, I repeat, it does not allow you to load up the matic, to light them up, to empty the clip, reload, and empty it again. Because that, based on the definition of force, right, in the legislation, the amount of force that you are allowed to use must be proportional to the threat that you face. So if a man come into your house, and I have had exchanges with a lot of supporters of the UNC on Facebook who feel they know what the legislation says and what it allows them to do. And many of them feel that once somebody comes into your home uninvited, you don't know this person, once they appear in your house, automatically you are entitled to claim self-defense and take their lives. And that, unfortunately, is not what the law allows. So a lot of people out there under the belief that they could do that just because the person come into your house and you have a right to defend your house and you could kill them. Because you heard Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar talk about load up the matic, and you want to load up the matic. You want to light them up and empty the clip. Well, if somebody comes into your home and you have a firearm and you do just that, and the police investigation determines that the amount of force used was more than was necessary, you will find yourself, yes, they say that this law will give you a fighting chance. The chance you'll be fighting for is to stay out of jail, stay out of prison. And our issue was, a lot of the population does not know that, right? They don't know that. All they know is what they were told, what they heard on the Monday Night Forum platform. Wayne Sturge, in his contribution, the Minister of Defense, member for Toko Sangi Grandi, he said it. The current laws as it pertains to self-defense, the average citizen doesn't know about these laws and they don't know where to go and find it. All right, they don't know how to go up online and look for it. You all don't have the time and you don't have the expertise to go and look for the current common law as it pertains to self-defense. But he expects you all to have the time and the expertise to go up online and look for the stand your ground legislation and read it and understand it. Right? And I made the point, and one of the points I was planning to make in my contribution is that we have a situation where learned counsel, right, lawyers, cannot come to a settled or consensus position with respect to the interpretation of this same legislation. But they expect people who have no learning in law and for whom the language of the law might be a bit beyond their reach to go sit down home, say, let me take up a copy of this thing and take a read this because I didn't get a chance to go to the consultation and I missed the debate in Parliament. So let me try and figure it out. Because if anybody decide to come up in my house and play mad, they will eat lead. Right? So you decide to read and you're reading and you're saying, but wait now, 7 saying this, but 9 saying something else. And how do I reconcile what is said in clause 7 with 9 are confused? And they expect you, and that's how you're supposed to operate, right? So you say, no, what the hell with that? Kamala say, load up the Matic. I'm loading up the Matic. I would have told you all before, and I would have read for you a newspaper article from 2 years ago. The man who is now the head of the National Operations Center, Johnny Abraham, speaking on a UNC platform during one of their crime talks where they were dealing with the issue of home invasion. And he, same Johnny Abraham, said, deal with them and know what to tell the police after, right? He chastised the police for being too soft on criminals who commit home invasions. And he referenced an example of where you had 6 men who went and committed a home invasion. The police killed 1 and lock up the next 5. And Mr. Abraham was upset. And he said, well, they killed 1, but what about the next 5? What difference would it have made if the next 5 had left the scene in body bags rather than in handcuffs? Basically, paraphrasing him. All right? Deal with them. And I remember the audience say, we need stronger laws. And what did Mr. Abraham say? Laws, waste that time. So as far as Mr. Abraham is concerned, the man who is now the head of the National Operations Center, you see this standing ground legislation is a waste of time. We need to send a message. His words. And how do you send the message? When they come in your house, light them up. All right? Deal with them. And just know what to tell the police after. And I've said before, if it is somebody comes into your home, they threaten you, and you need to stand to save yourself, you need to stand your ground, no problem. The current common law allows you to do that, to defend yourself. So when they come with this legislation, I want to give you the impression that this somehow gives you the ability and the wherewithal to do something that the current common law does not allow you to do. Utter rubbish. In fact, this law is far more restrictive than the existing common law as it pertains to self-defense, because this is confined to your home and the definition of what your home is in terms of curtilage and how far it expands. So if somebody comes into your home, all right, and the man comes with a knife, and you have a gun, you have the advantage. You have the advantage. You pull out your gun, and he pull the knife, and he decides to back out. And he turns to run, and you decide to fire a shot because you're frustrated. Because all you're hearing in your head, imagine 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 big hardback men come and kick down your door, and they come to rape your wife and your daughter. Imagine 10 o'clock in the night, you're at home relaxing, watching a movie with your family, and 3 masked men, 3 armed men kick down your door, and they come to rape your wife and your daughter. That is all the UNC selling. 3 men come and kick down your door 10 o'clock in the night or 2 o'clock in the morning, and they come to rape your wife and your daughter. Not that they come to steal your car. Not that they come to take your hard-earned money. Nothing like that, you know. They come to rape your wife and your daughter. So as a husband and a father, you hearing that repeatedly in your mind, over and over, every Monday night meeting, every consultation you went to. Imagine 2 o'clock in the morning. Imagine 10 o'clock in the night. And they're asking you to picture in your head your young daughter, right, being gang raped by 3 hardback men. They're asking you to imagine, sit down and actually conjure up in your mind a vision of your wife being gang raped by 3 big hardback men after they hog tie you and force you to watch. That is what they're telling you all over the country. Consultation after consultation, speaker after speaker. Imagine your wife and your daughter getting raped. What does that do to you? Right? That builds up a kind of hatred and a detest, a loathing inside of you. Hey, if they only play mad and come by me, I don't care. I will make a jail. That is your mindset. And so they are now trying to cultivate in the minds of citizens that if you are the victim of a home invasion, the first thing you must think is that they come to rape your wife and your daughter. And I would have loved to ask them in that chamber, which father inside there wants to imagine that? Which husband inside there wants to imagine that? Padarath is a young father, however he became so. He has a young daughter. She's not a teenager. She's not an adult. She's an adolescent. I think she's less than 10 years old, right? You think he wants to sit down and imagine his adolescent daughter, that 3 men kick down his door in the middle of the night and come to rape his young 7 or 8-year-old daughter? You think he wants to think about that? He wants to imagine that? Of course not. But you're inviting other fathers around the country to imagine something so low, so crass, the epitome of debauchery, right? They are morally bereft, and then have the audacity and the unmitigated gall to come in the parliament and accuse us of fear-mongering. Because we are telling people this legislation could get you into trouble. It is not what Mrs. Prasad Bissessar made it out to be. You do not have unqualified immunity to kill somebody if they come into your home uninvited with the intention of committing what will soon be, assuming they get the support in the Senate, the offense of home invasion. And that's all this has done. Made home invasion an offense, right? Punishable by jail time and having to pay a fine. But as I said before, the current common law allows you to defend yourself, whether it's in your home or outside, depending on the circumstance. All right? You could stand your ground now without this legislation. Case in point, a couple months ago, two of the relatives of a sitting UNC councillor, not PNM, UNC councillor, who is also a board member, recently appointed, 2 of her relatives attempted to rob a man of his van in Santa Cruz. According to what the media reported, the man pulled up on the side of the road, and there was a natural spring coming on from the side, wherever, on the hill, and he went to fill up his bottle or whatever with the spring water. And while he was doing so, a vehicle pulled up with the relatives of the sitting UNC councillor, not PNM. The nephew, I think it is, came out, pulled a gun on the man and ordered him or demanded that he hand over the keys to his vehicle. The individual decided to stand his ground, all right? But he didn't fight about what you might think stand your ground looks like. He take out the keys and he throw it in the bush. This is what was reported. Throw it in the bush. You want it? Go for it. And as the nephew of the sitting UNC councillor went to retrieve the keys, the gentleman who was a licensed firearm holder drew his weapon, shot the individual, opened fire on the getaway vehicle, shooting the driver, who turned out to be a relative of the sitting UNC councillor. Both of them died, right? The gentleman wasn't charged because gun pull, so he considered that his life was in danger, all right? They tried to take his property. Now, he could have retreated, which is what a lot of people would have done to save their life. If you don't have a gun, he was able to stand his ground because he had a gun. But if you don't have a gun, it is not advisable that you play mad or throw caution to the wind and rush in, because you might end up eating lead and you might be the one leaving in the body bag and not the perpetrator. In this case, both perpetrators, relatives of a sitting UNC councillor, both of them ended up in the mortuary. And as I said, the gentleman wasn't charged. Stand your ground didn't come out yet. We didn't debate it, right? But he stood his ground. Based on the existing common law, he was able to do so. He had a firearm, he pulled it, and he shot. But he wasn't in any danger, really, per se, with respect to the getaway driver. He didn't know if the person was armed or not, but he just opened fire because he felt that his life was in danger. Now, this stand your ground legislation clearly speaks to circumstance, all right? And let me tell you all some of the things that we were opposed to. Section 7 let me go, section 6 of the legislation. It says, subject to section 9, an occupant, meaning you, the homeowner, has no duty to retreat and has the right to stand his ground against a home invader and use or threaten to use defensive force against the home invader where the occupant honestly believes that force was being used against him or another person, or that a threat of force was being made against him or another person, or that his life or the life of another person was in immediate danger or threat of danger. So if the person comes into your home to commit a home invasion and they have a knife and you have a gun, you have to demonstrate to the court why you felt that your life was in danger. All right? Because clearly, as they say, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. You had the upper hand. So the man come in, freeze, hey, where do my house? And he see a gun and he drop the knife and he looking to see if he can escape. And you decide, can't no escape here today. You're dead. You come in my house and it has standing ground legislation that said that I don't have to retreat. No, you live in here in a body bag and you fire a shot. You hit him in his shoulder. He turned to run. He dropped the knife, and he turned to run. Bust through the door. Now he jumped your wall to come into your property. So of course now he has an injured shoulder and it will take him a little time to jump the wall to get away. But adrenaline pumping and he jumped the wall and he gone. No longer in your home. But you decide, I'm making an example of you because Johnny Abraham says send a message. So you run out with your gun and you take off running out behind him because he had a dead today. So you are the advantage again. One, you have a gun. Two, he's no longer armed. All right? And he trying to escape. But you figure you looking for shares and likes. You want to see your name and picture on Facebook or in the newspaper. You want to read about yourself and what you did, and that you get rid of one more miscreant. So you take off running. No, you have your gun and he is in your line of sight. You are focused. He, on the other hand, is disadvantaged. One, because he no longer has a weapon. Two, he running away. So the threat no longer exists. He running for his life. But he has to look back to see if you get in on him, and he has to look in front to make sure you don't run into nothing. So looking back and looking forward, again, he's also disadvantaged. And in doing that, he didn't notice the pothole in front of him, and he ended up in the pothole, fall down. Twist his ankle, twist his knee, whatever it is. And in trying to get up, you gain the advantage and you run up on him. And he there begging, oh God, don't kill me. You come to rape my wife and daughter? Empty the clip. What do you think going to happen? Because you telling us that he came in my house, so that's all I need to tell the police. He came in my house, and I was defending my house, and he, right. I think the police going to say, well done, excellent job. Good job, good job. You feel that's what they're going to say? It says here, section 6, subject to section 9, the occupant must honestly believe that force was being used against him or another person. The man on the ground. Even if he's in your house. Even if he's in your house. When you shoot him, the knife fell out of his hand. So you wounded him. All right? He's on the ground, begging for his life. He's no longer a threat. You are able to restrain him. But you choose, instead of exercising restraint, you are dead. Empty the clip. Load up the matic. Pull it back. Knock it on them and knock it again. Because you hear Kamala tell you could do that. Part B, believes that his actions were necessary and reasonable in order to defend or protect himself or another person from the use of threat or force. How are you explaining that? And even if the first shot hit him in his shoulder, let's see. And then you come up and you hit him a few more and you kill him. Remember, the autopsy will show which shot was close range and which one wasn't. So if you feel you could do like Abraham say and know what to tell the police, and you're going to give the police some cock and bull story, when the report comes back from the coroner, right, and the autopsy is done, and they are able to determine, well, the majority of shots were delivered close range, you have a case to answer. And you can't say, but then they say I didn't have the standing ground means that I don't have to retreat. It doesn't say you could kill. And that is why every single consultation that the UNC had, speaker after speaker, kept telling the audience, this legislation is not a license to kill. They kept saying at one consultation, in fact, the first one, I think, also, Saddam, you could go and pull it up. Government tells citizens, standing ground legislation is not a license to kill. Saddam, not licensed to kill. Roger Alexander, this legislation is not for a killing field. It is not a license to kill. Senator Alaha, same thing. Gerald Ramdeen, same thing. Not a license to kill. Why are they telling you that? Because they know that is what the population believes based on what they were told during the election campaign. It goes on. 6.2. Here is part. Now remember, the legislation says you do not have a duty to retreat. So the man come in your house, you find him in your house, you have a weapon, he have a weapon, as the case may be. You don't have to retreat. If you wish to run in, as they say, fools rush in where angels dare to tread, and you decide that you have a gun and you spend money for this gun, long time you're looking for the opportunity to use it, you're fed up going on to the gun range and only firing shots at inanimate objects, you're wasting money on bullets. So you have the law in place, you now have the gun, and now you have the opportunity to put both of them to the test. And you're not going to miss out on this opportunity because you don't know when next somebody's going to come and try to invade your home. So you have the opportunity now, let me use it. So I have a story to tell my partners after. Coming back to the same incident with the man who killed the two relatives of the UNC, the sitting UNC councillor. It was reported by one of the media houses that when the gentleman went to check on the driver of the vehicle and saw that she was a young woman that he had killed, that he started to cry when he realizes a young girl that he just killed, somebody's daughter whose life he just took, probably thinking, I really didn't need to shoot her because she didn't really present a threat at the time. But adrenaline pumping, you firing shots, gun pull on you ain't thinking. After the fact now he has to live with that. All right. Now I was making the point. It says you don't have a duty to retreat. If you feel you could do your thing, you do your thing. But section 6.2 of the law, it says when determining whether the defensive force used was reasonable in the circumstances, the court shall take into account. Here who? The court, not the police, not the DPP, the court, which means that the legislation anticipates that some of you all who believe that this legislation is going to give you the unqualified right to take the life of somebody just because they come into your home, the court anticipates that some of you all will end up in the courthouse. And that is what the law anticipates that. And so it puts provisions in place for when will it reach in the courthouse. But here's what it says. The court shall take into account in determining whether or not you will face trial, or if they will tell you, you're free to go, the nature of the force or threat. Some of you all love to have cameras in your home, all right? So if the event took place where there is in line of sight of a camera, understand that you can't lie to the police. Or the police might probably ask you for the footage. I might say, well, the camera ain't working. Okay. But the police are still trained to hear what you say and put two and two together and see if it really making sense. B, the extent to which use of force was imminent and whether there were other means available to respond to the potential use of force. So the court will consider that. You shoot the man, but could you have done something else? Was there other means that you could have done to avoid having to kill this man? They will look at that too. The occupant's role in the incident. You, the occupant, what was your role in the incident? They will look at that too. Whether any party to the incident used or threatened to use a weapon, firearm, or explosive device. So they will consider, did the man have a gun? Did he threaten you with a gun? Such that you felt you needed to draw your gun and shoot him? But Kamala didn't tell you that. E, the court will take into account the size, age, gender, and apparent physical capabilities of the parties to the incident. So if you're a big hardback man, you run into the gym and you taking all kind of supplements every day and creatinine and all them kind of thing and creatine and whatever, and you big and the person smaller than you, the court looking at all of that too. So let's see, what's the size of the occupant versus the size of the intruder. All of that, we had no input in this. This is the legislation that your government, your UNC puts in place. The size, the age, the gender. So if you are a big hardback man and the person who is the intruder is a young girl, the court will look at that too. And the expectation is that as a big hard man, you're supposed to be able to overpower this girl. So why you had to kill her? She had a knife and you had a gun? And you were trying to tell us that you couldn't disarm her? This little girl? Even if she's a big woman, but when you look at her frame, whether any party to the incident is a person with a mental disorder within the meaning of the Mental Health Act. The nature, duration, and history of any relationship between the parties to the incident, including any prior use or threat of force and the nature of that force or threat. So if you have a beef with somebody and the person come by you and you all have an exchange, fight start and you pull your gun and shoot. Now the law also says if you invite the person to your home and something happened and the person is now uninvited and you tell them, leave my house, they are now considered, and they refuse to leave, they are now considered to be a home invader because they are no longer welcomed. All right? Even though you know the person could be a family member and all, you tell them, come out my house, go from here. And they decide, they ain't going anyway. You can't run me from here. This is my grandmother's house. This is my father's house. And Bacchanal start fight and you have a gun and you pull and shoot. The court will take that into consideration. Any history of interaction or communication between the parties to the incident. So if you knew the person, all right, maybe it's your neighbor, some family member, they know you have money in the house and they come to rob you. You look at all of these things. Whether there was a possibility, hear this one, whether there was a possibility that the occupant could have safely retreated. So the law tells you you don't have to retreat, but if you find yourself before the court, according to section 6.2k, the court will take into consideration whether or not there was a possibility that you who shoot the person or kill the person could have safely retreated and you chose not to. Now, we made the point, quite a couple of our speakers were saying, but this is contradictory to what the other part says. You do not have a duty to retreat. If you don't want to retreat, you don't have to. But then you're telling me that the court will also consider whether or not you could have retreated and you chose not to, and you aggravated the situation by choosing not to retreat. All of that is what the court will consider to determine if you will stand trial to spend the rest of your life in jail or not. It goes on to say, whether the occupant did what he honestly and instinctively thought was necessary for a legitimate purpose, and any other compelling factors based on the circumstances of the case. To come before the court, the only time the court is invited to opine is when you get charged. So it means that this anticipates some people will get charged. And this is the point that we are making. The UNC did a piss poor job of consultation. That too many citizens do not know what is in this law, what it allows and what it does not allow, and they're operating under the assumption that just because the person come in your house, you could kill them and you good to go. Not happening. Also, section 7. Let me get this here. Right? Yeah. Section 9 really, but it says, for the purposes of this section, the use of deadly force may be justified when occupant honestly believes that using or threatening to use such force is reasonably necessary to prevent or remove a home invader from his dwelling house or to protect his property or that of another person. For the avoidance of doubt, a reference in this section to property includes and it breaks down property. But it then goes to say who is excluded. Let me get it here. The occupant or person assisting an occupant who uses or threatens to use force knew or reasonably should have known that the person entering or attempting to enter the dwelling house was a member of law enforcement authority, acting in the lawful execution of his duties. You all remember Wayne Sturge had one of these consultations said that if you see people outside your house dressed as police and they say they're police and you're not sure if they're police, you could open fire and shoot them. All right? He said that. You're not too sure? They dress in full police wear. You see that vehicle with the lights and stuff, and then but you ain't sure. Because you know these days people dress up like police. You don't know for sure. So it's better if you throw caution to the wind. Not that you should earn the side of caution. Throw caution to the wind. Shoot them. And then, according to him, It is better to be tried by 12 than to be carried by 6. So take your chances. Open fire on them. But if it turns out that it's really police, well then, as according to him, what he said in the debate, that's a matter between you, the DPP, and the police. Don't bother to say Wayne Sturt say. So 50%, 50-50. If you decide to say, well, I hear Wayne Sturt say, and you open fire on these men because you're not sure if it's police, and you decide, well, and you shoot them, even one of them, you will have a case to answer. And the law says that. The occupant, person assisting an occupant who uses or threatens to use force, or force knew or reasonably should have known that the person entering or attempting to enter the dwelling house was a member of the law enforcement authority, acting in the lawful execution of his duties. And it's not limited to police, right? They have a whole long existence. It could be a prison officer, it could be a member of the Estate Police Association, the security guard, and all of these people. Long list. So citizens don't know that. Okay? But the law says that if you should have known to use force, knew or reasonably should have known that the person entering was a member of the law enforcement authority, you could make a jail. The mental faculties of an occupant or a person assisting an occupant who uses force were, at the time of the alleged offense, substantially affected by the voluntary consumption of drug, which is not therapeutic. And they give you the definition of drug. So it means that if you were drunk, right? You went a little after work lime and you had one too many. And it just so happens that on that night, you were the victim of a home invasion and your head's still high, right? And they come into your house and it clearly says here that if you are under the influence of a drug, voluntary consumption of a drug which is not therapeutic, so you don't have a medical ailment for which you're taking medication, and the medication might have had a side effect. All right, you take a sniff, or you like to drink, you like to consume the gazoo, and you were drunk, and in the process of this home invasion, you kill the person, you can claim self-defense. For the purposes of this section, a drug is considered to be therapeutic where the drug is prescribed by and consumed in accordance with the directions of a medical practitioner, or of a kind available without prescription from a pharmacy and is consumed for the purpose of recommended by the manufacturer and in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. So if you are not of sound mind during the home invasion and you kill, you will have a case to answer. Now, I listened to Clyde Elder talk a lot about the victim, and the PNM care about the victims, and they only care about the perpetrators and the criminal. But what about the victims? They didn't care about the victims in the 13 constituencies that we represent. Because when we had our consultations, we had persons who were victims of home invasions who came and spoke to us and told us about their experience. But since the UNC didn't care to have any consultations in our constituencies, they weren't able to hear from those victims. So that what we spoke about in the parliament is what our constituents, some of whom are victims, told us. But they wouldn't know that because they didn't think it necessary. So they put it on us to hold consultations in our constituencies and didn't even have the courtesy to give us a copy of the legislation, the proposed legislation, to conduct consultations. So that when people ask us questions about what is in the law, we could answer. It wasn't until I spoke about it on one of my podcasts earlier that on the 28th of July, the Prime Minister, when we went to Parliament to debate the first extension of the state of emergency, the Prime Minister came and she said, in her contribution, one of her ministers informed her that a member of the opposition had said that we did not receive a copy of the legislation, so we couldn't hold consultations in our constituency, and that she had advised that a copy be sent to the leader of the opposition. Not to the 13 of us, to the leader of the opposition. So I suspect that the expectation was that the leader of the opposition will then provide copies to the rest of us. And they accuse us of being lazy and slothful. In the same time you're taking to send the email with the legislation to the leader of the opposition, how long would it have taken you to just add the email addresses of the next 12 members of the opposition and send it to us one time? So in case the leader of the opposition missed it, that we would have gotten it. But we lazy and we slothful, right? We promoting fear-mongering. Then they came to the issue. The issue was raised based on our research into this legislation, based on what happens outside. Because remember, they lifted this legislation from the Florida model, right? And one of the issues that persons in Florida and other parts have had with that model is the issue of disproportionate. It's disproportionate in terms of when you look at the number of victims, persons who have been shot, they are predominantly of a particular race. In this case, persons of African descent. And most times the persons who did the shooting was somebody who's Caucasian or a white person. And the issue was raised that we in Trinidad are not immune from that, because it is on record where you have a pundit from Aranjuez is on record as having said that the majority of persons who are committing home invasions are persons of African descent. He said it's not East Indians committing it, it's Africans who are targeting East Indians, not me say so. But let me see if I get it here. I don't want to misquote him. Guardian article dated the 26th of April, 2023. Pundit, East Indians under attack in Aranjuez, challenged by residents for his racist comment. Pundit Satyanand Maharaj believes that urban youth along the East-West corridor are targeting people of East Indian descent in Aranjuez, San Juan, and across the country. I say that boldly. They are products of a failed education system. They are products of failed parenting. These miscreants of the East-West corridor who feel that what you have belongs to them. Even if the statistic, they say 3 were killed in Charlieville and 1 was killed here, they all have the same complexion. They all come from the same ethnic group. He said during a media conference to address crime in Aranjuez yesterday. He made the claim mere meters away from where businessman Shavel Ramjatan was murdered just over a week ago by bandits who were attempting to rob him. Aranjuez has been under duress, not today. It has been growing steadily. And a lot of the business people that you see have been held up at their homes. Aranjuez is like a ghost town in the night. Nobody walks the road. He said the criminals think East Indians have money because of the size of their houses. And while he did not have official statistics to corroborate his claims, he said the victims usually described their attackers. The crime in Aranjuez is against East Indian people because we live in Aranjuez. We are the ones being targeted, but the perpetrators are not East Indian. The urban youth, the miscreants of the East-West corridor, those who have been allowed to fall through the cracks of society and emerge post-pubescent to terrorize because they go in and look for a little change to give their mother because their mother has 14 and 15 children, Marad said. He added, because if they are in Aranjuez today, what's stopping them from going to El Socorro tomorrow? And if they are in Aranjuez today, what is stopping them from going to Valsine tomorrow? He also does not believe that the prison will make a difference. We have to call it as we see it. When you lock them up, you send them to university. That jail is university to them, where they will get to network with bigger criminals. But not everyone living in Aranjuez agreed with Maraj's assessment. Did the UNC condemn him? Did they condemn him and say he's talking rubbish? But this is how he feels. And I am sure that there are lots of other persons who may not have voiced it as he did. But he said it. Now, I want to tell you that it is almost impossible to have a conversation about this standing ground legislation without mention of firearms. Nobody don't want, when anybody talk about home invasion, nobody wants to talk about cutlass, tree canal, gilpin, you know? Nobody is interested in that no more. Nobody interested in 2x4. Nobody interested in a piece of iron to defend yourself. No, everybody want a gun, one gun. That is why when they had the consultation, it was the first one with Alexander and them, and the article says that there were repeated questions about when will we be able to shoot. And it was against that backdrop that Mr. Alexander had to tell the audience, this is not a license to kill. And the article said, he was responded to repeated questions from members of the audience as to when we will be able to shoot. That's all we want to know. We want to hear nothing else. When will we be able to shoot? And Mr. Alexander said to them, the law is still under consideration. Do not begin to act as if it has become law or as if it is already law. What does that mean? Do not begin to act as if it has already become law. And what you're suggesting to these people, that when this becomes law, that it will allow you to act in a way that the current law does not allow you to act. So is the implication there that this law will allow you to just shoot people at will and they get away regardless of the circumstance? The police will just say, well, or they came into your house, well, no problem. Job well done. And that's the end of that. No, it is not the end of that. And while Elder and they were talking about the victims and the victims, and Mr. Elder spoke about he was a victim and his father, home invasion. Some men came in, ransacked the house, they come to take money or whatever it is, and they had a cutlass, and they were about to pelt a chop that could have taken off his father's neck. And the father raised his hand to block, and the chop connected, and one of the bones in his hands was severed, and the other one was almost severed, and so on. Right? And we commiserate. We don't support that kind of thing. But he took comfort in the aspect of the law that speaks to penalties for the perpetrator. Right? So he talks about how many years in jail you will get. Let me just get it here. What's the penalty? Let me see here. Upon conviction, I see my time running, so I'll have to continue this during the week. But let me just get this here. What's the penalty? Right. Just where is it? Where is it? And folks, the legislation is just about 9 clauses, right? So it's not much for you to read if you're so inclined. But as I said, the language of the law for some people could be a bit far. And because of the fact that some of it seems to be a bit contradictory, you might have some issues with it. Just now, where is this thing going? So let me just give you the definition of members of law enforcement, as I told you all just now. Members of law enforcement authority means a bailiff under the Bailiff Act. So you're in courts, and the bailiff come to take back the stuff, and you get lock, and he pull the bolt cutter to cut the padlock. Don't come in my house, you know. If you come in here today, I tell you, you're dead. I don't you that. Grab the cutlass and you drag it on the ground and then make some sparks. If you come inside here, I tell you, you're dead. We love to do that. A member of the prison service established under the Prison Services Act. A member of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. Yes, so soldiers can come into your property as well. A police officer appointed under the Police Service Act. A constable as defined under the Supplemental Police Act. You know the Supplemental Police? Right. A member of the Special Reserve Police appointed under the Special Reserve Police Act. A member of the Police Complaints Authority established under the Police Complaints Authority Act. All of these people fall under law enforcement who could come into your house. It goes on again. A member of the Municipal Police Service. A customs officer under the Customs Act. A person lawfully executing or assisting in the lawful execution of an order of the court. So you know these guys who come around, they come to serve summons. Right? And you figure, well, he's not police. Don't come in my property. Don't give me nothing. I'm not taking them. Don't come in my yard. I tell you, don't come in my yard. You could make jail for that too. They are considered part of law enforcement. Any other agency of state in which investigative powers similar to those exercisable by a police officer appointed under the Police Service Act are lawfully vested. All of those people are considered law enforcement officers who could come onto your property. So take chain up from Wayne Sturge. Who telling you you could shoot them in the back, you know? Yeah, you could shoot them in the back. The court will look at, as I told you all just now, your ability to retreat. And if the man running away, if he's running away, the threat no longer exists. Your life is no longer in danger. You cannot claim self-defense when your life is not in danger and the perpetrator has retreated and is looking to leave. Okay. Trying to find the penalty here. Just now. Okay. Armed weapons, steals property. All right. For the purpose, where is this? I don't know why I'm not seeing this. For the purposes, right. Where is the penalties? So it says something to the effect of about $500,000, 25 years in jail, and all of these different things, right? But you know what it doesn't say here? While it speaks to what the penalties would be upon conviction. Now remember, you can't convict unless you apprehend. You can't convict somebody in absentia. So if the police don't hold the perpetrator, there is no conviction. So they have to hold the person first, charge them, arrest and charge, and bring them before the court. A trial, And we all know how long trials take in Trinidad and Tobago. All right? But what you as a potential victim should be concerned about is the fact that it does not say anything here with respect to bail, that bail would be denied to the perpetrator. So if the person comes and violates the sanctity of your home, they get away, the police catch them, and they bring them before the court, there's a possibility that they could get bail and be back out in 2 to 3 days after they were arrested. And now they know, well, it has somebody out there who could identify me and testify against me and put me away for life. Let me see what I could do. So I just have 2 more minutes. All right, so let me see how I could wrap up, but I'll have to finish because we need to go into this, right? A friend of mine who was a victim of a robbery on I told you all about this some time ago. Some of you I know and knew. She was a victim of a robbery on Charlotte Street. Small, petite girl, could be about 115 pounds, you know. She was wearing a gold chain, standing outside a business place that her family owns. And this guy walks up to her, holds her in a chokehold, lifts her off the ground, bodily, ripped the chain off her. He wasn't wearing no mask or nothing, so she saw his face. And he just take it, chuck her against the wall, and he walk off cool. There were people around. Nobody tried to stop it. Nobody tried to hold him, nothing at all, because they don't know if he have a weapon, so nobody risking their life. He probably did the same thing to a few more people subsequent. And eventually he was held by the police. And so the young lady was called by the police because she went to make the report and so on. She was called by the police to do a ID parade. Now, we are accustomed seeing on TV, an ID parade they carry in the police station. As we see on TV, yeah? And you have these men in a room and they're holding up this card or whatever it is. About 5-6 men, all similar description, similar build, and so on. And they will say, number 1, step forward, please. And you take a good look. No. Number 2, step forward, please. And they keep going like that until the victim is able to identify the attacker if the person is there, right? That's what we're accustomed to now. It's a one-way mirror, so she could see them, he could see them, you could see them, but they can't see you. So they don't know which one of the victims is pulling them out of the lineup. And my friend informed me that that's not how it's done here. They took her to Massey stores, gave her an 8 and the N95 mask that we used to wear for COVID. They gave her one of that to put on and told her go inside, take a trolley, and just go and walk the aisles, pretend you're shopping, and we will have several suspects in different lanes, and you just walk and see if you find the person, see if you recognize the guy, right? So she's already terrified, traumatized by this incident, and now you want me to come face to face with my attacker again, not behind a one-way mirror. You bring me to the grocery, give me a mask to put on, hand me a basket or a trolley and tell me go and walk the aisles and look at, you will see on each aisle we have somebody resembling the person and see if you could identify the person. Now the perpetrator knows why he's there, because why the hell the police catch me and only bring me to a grocery? So he knows why he's there. Perhaps he might have been part of a lineup before in the same way, so he's aware of this. So he there looking now, he trying to see, well, who coming in? Because obviously he has to be facing in such a way that she could look directly into his face to see. You can't get a side profile, you need to see. So she is looking now, obviously you're terrified. You're concerned that this person will recognize you. You don't want to do it, but the police tell you, you know. And she is walking and looking, and you have to be looking at this man, looking at every face. And all you have on is this face mask, right? You feel the guy don't know. You're the only person who came into the aisle with a mask. He ain't stupid. He knows you are the person that the police bring. You are the victim, and you are the one they brought there to identify him. Because that's what he's looking out for, especially if he's done it before and probably out on bail. So he knows. So he's looking for the person in the mask. And if it is that you have certain features that he might be able to recognize, or worse yet, suppose you were the victim of a sexual assault in the process of him robbing you, right? So you went through that trauma already. So he would have seen your face, so he knows your features, and then he sees you coming in. Oh, is she this one? All right. Yeah. Right? And that's what you have to deal with. So you're terrified now that this person could come back. Remember, is this one. You need to get rid of she, because she could identify me and she could testify and cause me to make a jail. So every time you see a strange car pull up outside your house, you're worried. You hear a noise 2 o'clock in the morning, you're worried. If they come back to finish you off, to get rid of you. Nothing in this says that the person would be denied bail. In fact, in your circumstance, if you are the victim and you shoot the person, right? And your claim of self-defense is not as clear-cut as you think it is, and therefore the police, based on their investigation, determine that a charge has to be laid against you. And you honestly believe that what you did, you could have done it because you didn't know the law, and ignorance of the law is no excuse. And you can't go and say, well, I heard Ms. Persad say you could shoot them, light up, load up the matic. I thought I could have do that. And I can tell you, based on the exchanges I have had with several UNC supporters, that is what they believe, that once a person come into your house, you could kill them. Whether you could have de-escalated the situation or not. And this here speaks a lot about the use of force must not be disproportionate to the, let me get it right here. Right. It must not be disproportionate to the situation or the threat. Just now. Right. Another question that somebody had asked me that the law doesn't address. The person says, if I have a firearm and I don't want to kill the person, right? Because they come into my house and I want to fire a warning shot. So they know I have a gun. Because they're outside, there says people dressed as police. I don't want to take the chance to shoot them and they turn out to be police. So can I fire a warning shot to let them know that I have a gun, and hopefully that will scare them off? The law doesn't address that. It doesn't speak to that. And this is one of the questions that we would have fielded at our consultation. So that most likely would have to be treated with amendments under the Firearm Act. But that has not yet been done. So when this passes, and if that such amendments are not made to the Firearms Act, and somebody comes into your home and you decide to fire a warning shot, you might very well find yourself having to answer a case to that. Because the question was put to Mr. Alexander, and he said have no such thing as a warning shot. Once you have a gun and you aim it, the intention is to shoot and to kill. So, can you fire a warning shot? I don't know. I cannot answer that question. All right? I could just say what was reported by some attorneys. Amendments may have to be made to the Firearm Users Act or whatever it is to be able to cover that. The question was also asked, so if there's a gun in the home, somebody has a FUL, so only that person is authorized to use the gun, and the perpetrators come into the home, and the person who is authorized to use the gun is incapacitated or whatever it is, can another member of the household go and take the gun and use it to shoot the person? That question was asked. Saddam said there are gray areas in the law, and he will have to refer that to the Attorney General for an answer. So he is the Minister of Legal Affairs. He had a copy of the legislation in front of him, and neither of those two things enabled him to be able to give a definitive answer. He said he had to talk to the Attorney General. I don't know if he did not talk to the Attorney General because there's nothing in the law that speaks to that. Now, we do know there was a case a couple of years ago where the woman who took her husband's gun, the guy, she claims that the guy came, he was trying to bang in on the door and trying to get into the house, and she was able to take the gun and I think put her hand through the window, whatever, and she shot him in his head. Turns out that he was unarmed, but that's the story that she gave. We didn't get a follow-up, so we don't know if she was charged, if that matter is still under investigation or whatever as the case may be. The problem is that you, based on what is in this law, there is no special treatment for you in terms of the process to expedite your case to determine innocence or guilt. So you will have to go through the same process as everybody else. So if you are charged with murder, you might have to spend some time on remand unless you could get bail. Because there's nothing in this law. But the thing is, attorney at law, Kyle Taklal Singh, made two recommendations to the Attorney General, which seemingly they did not, well, not to the Attorney General, but he made two recommendations, which it appears was not taken into consideration with respect to this law, right? So let me get it here. I know I saved it. Right. Did I save it here? Right. Here's what Taklal Singh said. And he was responding to Larry Lala, who was one of our attorneys who was speaking at our consultation, right? And he's addressing some of Mr. Lala's concerns. And he said, if Mr. Lala's worry is that some homeowners might still be wrongfully charged Hear what he says. Might still be wrongfully charged. Wrongful arrests and prosecutions, sadly, occur even under clear and uncontroversial laws. So this, however, is not reason to abandon legislative reform. So Mr. Lala is saying we are concerned that persons who, in attempting to defend themselves against home invaders, could be wrongfully arrested. And Mr. Kyle Taklal Singh is saying, well, small thing, that has happened. Even with uncontroversial laws, people just get wrongfully arrested and end up behind bars on remand and had to wait until their matter is heard to determine if they're innocent or guilty. Here's his recommendation to treat with that. He says, perhaps the Attorney General may wish to consider including in the bill a procedure allowing a person charged to obtain prompt judicial review of the decision to prosecute based on criteria set out in the Act, or even a provision requiring the DPP's consent before charges are laid in cases contemplated by the bill. There is nothing in this bill that speaks to that. So there will be no prompt judicial review. If you get charged, you will go through the same system as it exists now for persons who are charged just like you for similar crimes. And we know the judicial system is not effective in this country. This matter could drag out. And if you don't get bail, or if you don't have or if you do get bail but you cannot afford bail, well, then you will be sitting on remand and you will be a ward of the state until your matter is heard. He goes on to say, ultimately, this bill is about restoring deterrence, protecting the vulnerable, and making clear that law-abiding citizens will not be abandoned by the legal system for defending their homes. This law encourages you to rush in, throw caution to the wind, and you might very well find yourself in a situation where when you could have retreated and you chose not to, because you might not have seen the gun in the first instance that the person has, right? And these guys coming in with all kind of high-powered guns. So even if you figure, well, you have a gun, and it's 3 of them, as the UNC wants you to imagine, and all 3 of them have guns, what do you think your chances are? Are you Clint Eastwood? Or Yul Brynner? Or what's this guy's name? Charles Bronson? Shooting from the hip? You just pull out and pow, 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 and you take all the 3 of them one time. Unless you're that good, unless you're a crack shot. What happens in the case if in the process of you defending your home, defending your family against these home invaders, you pull out your gun, you fire some shots, and you end up hitting a member of your family, and they die? What happens in that case? The legislation does not speak to that. And all of these things are possibilities. And we are saying, and from my perspective, the government needs to engage in proper consultation so that as many citizens as possible could understand what the law allows and what it does not allow. And contrary to what the UNC told you, you cannot load up the Matic. You cannot empty the clip, reload and empty it again, and you cannot light them up. Because an investigation will be conducted to see if your use of force was disproportionate to the threat that presented itself. And if it is, you could have to answer a case. And that is what we are saying. They should have been sent to a joint select committee comprising members of the government and the opposition, so they could bring what they would have learned and the questions and the concerns raised at their consultation. And we could have done the same thing and bring to their attention the questions that were raised from our consultations, which they don't know about, and we try to iron it out. And then if it is that we have to involve the LRC for them to look at it and see what amendments they could make and come back with legislation that everybody, the opposition and the government, could say, okay, we came together as a group and we all contributed to this legislation. We happy with it? They happy with it? Yes. And all 41 of us votes yes. That's all we say, no. We have no problem. We just do that. Let us have real consultation so that we can have consensus legislation. Listen to our concerns. They come to say, they bring one amendment, not one amendment. What are we bringing amendments for? There has been at least 3 other occasions in this legislative session where they brought bills, we presented amendments, and they were dismissed. They didn't even bother to listen to it. The Attorney General was very dismissive about that ain't really making sense. The first time we offered amendments on the floor, they insist that it must come in writing and it must be circulated. And even though when the PNM was in power, they allowed them to bring amendments on the floor for consideration. They said they're not doing that. Bring your amendments in writing, have it circulated so that we could read it. And don't come and bring it on the same day. Send it before so we could consider it and then come to the parliament and make a decision. And even when we do that, they still dismiss it. A joke twice is never nice. We're not going down the road thrice. All right? They have set the precedent that they're not willing to listen to any amendments from us. This is their law. And as they said, they don't need our support to pass it, and it will pass with or without our support. So they're not even entertaining any amendments from us. The only amendments I think I saw the Attorney General may have considered and accepted was in the Senate from independent senators. All right? But they don't want to hear nothing from us. So to come and say, oh, they come and they're opposing the legislation, but they brought no amendments. Been there, done that, we're not going down that road again. So we don't play that game. Right? Miss us with that nonsense. There was one other thing I wanted to touch on with respect to this. Too many gray areas in this law, and that is our problem. It says a person commits the offense of home invasion if he unlawfully enters an occupied dwelling house when he knows or has reason to know that one or more persons is present in the dwelling house. So what if there is nobody present? Unlawfully enters a dwelling house and remains therein until one or more persons is present in the dwelling house. So again, if it is that there is nobody present, is it still a home invasion? Fraudulently represents himself to be a member of the law enforcement authority, is invited into an occupied dwelling house and fails to leave immediately upon being asked by an occupant to do so. Right? So if you were invited in, conversations start, there is a disagreement, and the homeowner no longer wishes you to be in the property and they tell you to leave. It says here, if you do not leave immediately, you are considered to be a home invader. All right? And they could call the police on you, and based on this act, which intends to make home invasion an offense, by virtue of this fact that you did not leave immediately upon being asked by the occupant to do so, you have committed the offense of home invasion. So it doesn't even need to involve the use of force. The person tell you, come out my house, and you want to stand your ground because you feel that you have some entitlement to be there. Or you just the embarrassment, you ain't taking no embarrassment for nobody, wherever it is, me going away. Make me leave now. No, well, you make me leave. And you big and you bad, you make me leave. Let me see you. And they tell you again, leave my place to my place. I ain't going nowhere. You can't make me leave. Who is you? Ain't you bad? Therein, you have committed the offense. And the penalty for the offense is significant. Years in jail and a significant amount of money to be paid simply because you decide to play bad man, bad John. They tell you to leave and you decided not to leave. No gun involved, no violence. It's clear here. You commit the offense of home invasion if such a person is invited into an occupied dwelling house and fails to leave immediately upon being asked by an occupant to do so. Right? So you went and you drink too much, and you come and you're cussing and starting to carry on, and they say, we don't want you, go from here. Go from here. You know when you drink your rum, you just get on like a fool. Go from here. I ain't going nowhere, so and cuss that. You pelt 2 cup, you try to pelt a cup and fight that. You initiated it, but you went and it speaks here about drugs. You had too much to drink. Altercation ensued, and the next thing, police reach, and they had to charge you with home invasion. When you come to your senses now, you're facing a charge and a possible penalty of how many years in jail and a significant amount of money to pay. A person who damages or destroys any property with or without the use of intimidation, threats, or violence. Who damages or destroys any property with or without the use of intimidation, threats, or violence. All you have to do is just damage people's property, you know. A person who intentionally causes any injury, including grievous bodily harm or death, or commits a grievous sexual assault or rape on any person in the dwelling house. We could understand that. A person who intimidates or uses force or threatens the imminent use of force on any person within the dwelling house, whether or not the injury occurs and during the commission of an offense discharges a firearm or detonates an explosive device. Right, so here it is. Subject to Section 3, a person who commits an offense under this section is liable on conviction on indictment to a fine of $500,000 and to imprisonment for 25 years. That is the only penalty stipulated, $500,000 and 25 years imprisonment. And as I told you before, you could be charged and possibly convicted for home invasion simply because you refused to leave after being told to do so. After being invited, you were uninvited, told to leave immediately. There's a reason why they put the word immediately. So even if you were told to leave immediately and you did not leave immediately and you lingered and you choose to cuss and carry on and whatnot, and because you did not leave immediately, even if you subsequently leave, based on what this is saying, you could face a charge of home invasion because you did not leave immediately. And you all want us to support that? That just because you, displaying what is typical of a trainee, did not leave immediately, face a charge. And we as legislators are responsible for you now facing 25 years in prison. Now it's left up to the discretion of the court, because where the legislation is silent or deficient, then judicial discretion will fill the gap. But I recommend that you all go and search this and read it. Some of it, as I said, might be a little, but as Winston said, well, I don't have the expertise or the time to read it. Right. Yes, no. See this issue of proportionality, and again, I keep stressing that, right? As Saddam said, if a person comes into your home, he doesn't have a gun, you don't have a gun, but an altercation ensues, right? You pelt a chop, and say you chop him on the shoulder, whatever it is, he's incapacitated, he's in pain. You cannot take the cutlass and decide to deal him a few more chops, because then that is disproportionate to the force or to the threat that existed, and the police will look at that. So you can't do that. And if you don't have a gun, it does not make sense for you to stand your ground, especially if the perpetrators have one. And this law does not entitle you to a gun. It simply allows you to stand your ground, to not retreat if you choose not to, and it makes the offense of home invasion an offense. That's all it does. But it doesn't give you any powers more than what the existing common law gives you to defend yourself. All right? So if tonight, this law hasn't gone to the Senate yet, so it has not been passed, there is no stand your ground legislation in force yet. But if tonight somebody comes into your home, or this evening, or tomorrow, before this passes, you can defend yourself. If you have a gun and the threat exists that it's possible that the person can kill you, and this is the only way to defend yourself, you can do so. You do not need the stand your ground legislation to be able to do so. And I gave you all the example of the man who shot and killed the two relatives of the UNC counselor. He did not need stand your ground legislation to stand his ground. He stood his ground and he killed two people. They are today, well, dust, I assume, or shooting up daisies, or whatever it is. But before I leave, because I'm already over my time and I'm sure I'm going to get cussed. Lord Father. But anyway, when Mr. Stewart said, you know, you don't have the time or the expertise, I simply went and I Googled self-defense laws Trinidad and Tobago. And the first thing that came up was a publication from the Legal Aid and Advisory Authority that was published in March of 2024. What does self-defense mean in law? Self-defense is a common law defense, not in legislation, which can be explained in the following principles. A person who is attacked is entitled to defend himself. In defending himself, he is entitled to do what is reasonably necessary. The defensive action must not be out of proportion to the attack. That is very important. Don't do more than you need to. If there is no need to kill, don't kill because you're frustrated. If you are able to disarm and incapacitate without taking the person's life, then do so. Because if the police investigation shows that you could have avoided and you proceeded to kill, you will face a charge. In a moment of crisis, a person may not be able to determine the exact measure of his necessary defensive action. The police will investigate that. If there has been no attack, then the issue of self-defense does not arise. If there is no attack, then the issue of self-defense does not arise. So not because the person says, shoot me, chop me, lash me, that you will do it. Because your head hot and you pick up a piece of wood and you hit them. Not expecting to kill, and then they fall down and you think, well, okay, they go charge me with manslaughter. When can self-defense be used? A person may use such force as is reasonable in the circumstances as he believes them to be for the purposes of defending himself, defending another person, defending property, prevention of a crime, or lawful arrest. How does self-defense operate in the court? The accused is required to raise the issue of self-defense through evidence, but the burden, sole responsibility rests on the prosecution to make the fact finder, which is often the jury, but can be the judge alone, feel sure that the accused did not act in self-defense when he or she committed the offense. Load up the matic, pull it back, knock it on them, and knock it again. Now, you might get away if you knock it on them, but if you knock it on them again, you might face a charge. What is reasonable force and when can it be used? The fact finder will consider if there was an attack or an anticipated attack upon the accused, and as a result, the accused must have believed on a reasonable ground that he or she was in imminent danger of death or serious bodily harm. The force used by the accused must have been used to protect himself either from death or serious bodily injury. Therefore, the question to be answered is whether the accused reasonably believed that he or she was in imminent danger of death or serious bodily harm, that is danger that is impending or looming. The accused must further believe that the use of force was necessary to prevent or resist the attack. The force used must also be in keeping with the degree of danger in the circumstances of the case. Again, proportionality. The use of force has to happen within the moment that the situation is unfolding and cannot be under circumstances of revenge. You can't go and aggravate the person to rile them up and then you kill them and say you were self-defense. If the person is leaving, don't go and try to choke the hornet's nest, to raise the hornets so that you could have an excuse to kill them. Is there a duty to retreat? Now I'm reading the common law here, not stand your ground. There is no general duty to retreat in all cases where self-defense is raised. You don't have to retreat now. The common law says that. So this law isn't giving you anything in addition to what the common law doesn't already give. They are simply seeking to codify the law that already exists, but the existing common law allows you to stand your ground. It says so clearly here. There is no general duty to retreat in all cases where self-defense is raised. The question whether the accused ought to have retreated is an element which the fact finder may consider in deciding whether the force was reasonably necessary, having regard to all circumstances at the time. Simple as that. Can an accused be charged for murder where self-defense arises on the circumstances of the case? Even where self-defense arises on the circumstances of the case, an accused can be charged for murder, and the decision as to whether self-defense was reasonable would be left to the fact finder, which is in this case, the court. So you can't just automatically say, well, it was self-defense and figure that the police will pat you on the back and say, good job, and say, all right, go your way. No. You might very well find yourself fighting for your life in the court. So this law, all who figure is, yeah, the UNC and the promise made, promise kept, promise delivered. They delivered nothing. Nothing that doesn't already exist in law. All right? Common law, that is. Someone is saying, so you admit bandits has the upper hand, that is why they are bringing this law? No, I am not admitting any such things. The government is bringing this law to fool you all. Because the bandit may not have the upper hand. You could have a gun, as I said before, and the bandit has a cutlass. Who has the upper hand? or the bandit have a pen knife, who has the upper hand? Who has the upper hand there? You or the bandit? And the fact of the matter is, when this becomes law, nothing is going to change. Because if the law is proclaimed tonight, well, not tonight, but a month from now, you think the next day that what? A bandit comes into your home and what you're going to say, stop. I have the standing ground legislation here, freeze. That's what you're going to do? Because when this becomes law, you're not going to see the next day the police is going to come and knock on the door. Hello, good day, good day. The standing ground legislation is now law. So we came to bring you a firearm so you could defend yourself against the bandit who comes with the firearm. And I am telling you, if you have a firearm now, you do not need this legislation to stand your ground. I just read for you, based on what the legal aid put out, there is no duty to retreat in the existing common law. If you don't want to retreat now, you don't have to. And you don't need stand your ground to do so. That is what I just said. So when the UNC gives you the impression that this law is giving you the right to do certain things that you can't do now, it is untrue. The common law now allows you to do that, to defend yourself. But most people thinking about this, that this law is probably going to make it easier for them to get a gun. It will not. Changes have to be made, amendments have to be made to, well, the UNC said they're going to bring a law to make it easier for law-abiding citizens to acquire a firearm. They have not brought any such legislation to the parliament as yet. It does not exist. So the process to get a firearm, even when this law becomes law, the process remains the same unless they come to parliament with new legislation that says this is what currently exists to get a firearm and this is the amendments that we are making. Or we are removing the responsibility or the authority to grant firearms from the police commissioner and we are going to give it to some other authority. We will give it to, we will create a firearms board or authority and they will be the ones responsible. Unless they do that, when this becomes law, if it becomes law and it is passed in the Senate and then the president proclaims it, all right? It does not mean, it makes no difference. Because if the next day somebody is a victim of a home invasion and the perpetrators have guns and you have none, it will be the same thing you'll be reading. Home invasion took place in Diego Martin. The householders were beaten and robbed and the men had firearms. Look, the case with the owners of Passad the Food King, when the mother and father were robbed a couple of years ago by a man who was on remand. He was in prison for murder. And then Jayanti Lakshmi Dayal and Anand Ram Logan and these guys went to the court and petitioned the court to overturn murder as a non-bailable offense. So now murderers started getting bail. And this gentleman who had been sitting on remand for however long for murder, one of the first things that he did upon getting released on bail, organized with some men and went to rob the mother and father, the matriarch and patriarch of the Passad family. They had walls, they had gates, they had cameras, and they had guns. 2 guns, which were taken from them by the perpetrators. How would this law have helped them? You could have a gun and not be able to stand your ground, as one of my constituents told me. He said, but look at me, I could barely stand up, far more to stand my ground. And he said, even if I have a firearm, by the time they kick down my door, the time it take me to grab my walker, to get up, to shuffle, to go and get the gun, because I am walking around the house all day with a gun. The time it would take me to go and shuffle to get the gun, they will put some licks on me and throw me in a corner and take the gun. This law makes no difference. All it simply does is to codify what already exists into law. All it does is make now there is no offense called home invasion. This law will make home invasion an offense. So if somebody comes to your home now and they invade your home, they will probably be charged under the Larceny Act or something. If they beat you up, they might get an assault charge, but there is no offense of home invasion. So this will simply say, you broke into the people's home, or you came into the man invited you to his party, you came to the party, you had too much to drink in the party, you start to get on like a fool, and he tell you to leave his house, and you decide you're not leaving. He called the police, and the police came, and within the definition of the law, you committed the act or the offense of home invasion. You lock up. Did the man tell you to leave immediately? Did you leave immediately? No, I didn't. Did he tell you a second time to leave? Yes. Did you leave? No. Well, all right. The law says because you didn't leave immediately, you have committed the offense of home invasion. Put your hand behind your back. Handcuff. Throw you in the van. You need a lawyer. You know how a case to answer. A case in which you are facing a penalty of $500,000 and 25 years in jail. All because you had too much to drink. You can't hold your liquor. You start to get on like a fool. Because this one, you want to go and wind up on people, and the woman tell you she ain't whining, she don't want to whine, and you want to get on stupid. And they try to put you out and you didn't want to leave. Charge. Not making sense. And all you are focusing on is bandit and not understanding that there are deeper elements in this law, such as what I just explained, which has nothing to do with anybody breaking into your home. This is somebody you invited into your home. Circumstances change and you no longer wanted them in your home. And because they refuse to leave, they face a charge. Simple as that. You see. And someone, Christian Ali, is telling me, please advise PNM supporters not to get involved in crime. Christian, did you hear me say just now, or is Kishan Ali, did you hear me say just now that the gentleman who shot the two people in Santa Cruz, that both persons who were killed were the relatives of one sitting UNC councillor, Ms. Ghani. All right? They were not PNM. Ms. Ghani is a sitting UNC councillor, and she was recently appointed to a board of directors, right? She's a director on our state board. And the two persons were reported to be her relatives. I am certain they were not PNM. So maybe if she had told them not to get involved in crime, today they would still be alive. Her UNC niece and UNC nephew. I am certain they were not supporters of the PNM. Kishan. So maybe you should take your own advice and tell UNC supporters, stop committing crime. Because the two of them were UNC supporters, not PNM. Apparently you missed that. Jerome is saying UNC supporters don't even understand the bill. All of them like the statement that came. I said, exactly. And their very own leader might very well end up causing not only their leader. Remember for Toko Sangigrandi who telling them stupidness, but you could shoot the man in the back even though he run in. And if you're not sure if it's police, you could shoot them. Better to be tried by 12 than to be carried by 6. And all that stupid talk. And you are taking that, take chain up and see if all you don't end up making a jail. So, Daniela, yes, I go and get cussed. Folks, it was nice, but as I said, I'm half an hour over my time. So we will I'll try to continue the conversation, but I said I'm traveling tomorrow, so I'll be out for just over a week. But we'll chat again soon. And on this saying, as though this is bonanza. Exactly, it is not. It is not. So Kishan, next time, consider, I hope you don't drink and you're somebody who could hold your liquor. Don't go by any family member. They invite you for a party, or you're probably going to a Matiku night or whatever it is, you know, a birthday party, something. You're just having a Lime home, anniversary party or something of the sort, and you had too much to drink. You start to get on a little wassy, and they tell you to leave. Immediately. The law says if you do not leave immediately, even if you leave subsequently, by virtue of the fact that you did not leave on the first request, you have committed the offense of home invasion. And if they call the police, you could be charged with home invasion. Now they might beg for you, oh, go officer, allow him now. We just wanted you to make you again stupid and we didn't want to. You might bounce up the wrong police officer who want to make news to say that they made the first arrest and the first charge under the home invasion law, right? And simply because the person did not obey on the first request to leave, immediately he get charged. Let that not be you, Kishan, please. And it has some people who might very well set you up for that, knowing that you don't know the law and they know the law, and they invite you to the house, and then they aggravate a situation to tell you to leave, knowing that you would not leave immediately, and then they call the police come, and you telling yourself, well, it's nothing there, the police will just come and talk to them or whatever. No, the law, the police has the responsibility to uphold the law. And the law says if you do not leave immediately upon request, you have committed the offense of home invasion. And it have people out there who just nasty enough to do you that. They know the law. They know you don't know the law. And they invite you to your house, aggravate a situation, tell you to leave. And because you didn't leave, them call the police and you even know. And then next thing you see the police car pull up outside and want to know what is going on. And you get charged. Patricia Batiste is asking, how do I get a FUL to stand my ground? Well, Patricia, you have to go down right now. The process is you have to go down to the government printry and you request the forms there, you pay for the forms, and then you fill them out. But based on what I would have seen on one of those forms, I don't have any firearm. Contrary to what John Jeremy said, the majority of us don't have any firearms, right? I think the form requires you to fill out some information with respect to the type of firearm that you intend to own. So you may need to consult with a firearms dealer, one of those dealerships, so they could assist you with filling out the form, and then you submit it to the firearms unit of the police service, and then they have to go through the process. It's a very rigorous vetting process because they have to meet with your friends, your family, your co-workers to make sure that you have sound mind and that you are somebody who could and should own a firearm. If you're married, they have to talk to your husband, or they have to talk to your wife if it's a man applying for it, to make sure that your husband will beat you, and so on, and that you don't feel that him owning a gun could be detrimental to you. They have to come to your home to see where you're going to store the gun, so you're probably going to need to buy a safe, and all of these things. They need to make sure that it's properly stored in a way that nobody else in the home can access it except you. There's a whole process. I have a friend of mine who applied, and he told me it causing some bacchanal because after he was interviewed, they asked him all kind of questions about his current girlfriend, his exes, and so on. He gave them the information, but the current girlfriend didn't know about one of his exes with whom he's still a very good friend. They're not in nothing, but And when the police officer came to interview the girlfriend, he asked her about this other girl that she knows nothing about. And after he gone, when my friend come home, was bacchanal. So who is so-and-so? How you didn't tell me about so-and-so? And why you didn't tell me about so-and-so? And yeah. Poor soul. Yeah. Slide Michelle says he may go live later. Slide Michelle, if you're going to talk about the radar, I would have liked to talk about that today, but that is an unfolding situation. I saw that to do damage control, you had those guys, John Jeremy, run up to Tobago along with Wayne Sturge and the head of the Defense Force to meet with Farley and to brief him. And so then they could have a press conference afterwards, and Farley could repose confidence in the Prime Minister, and he wants to thank her for sending this high-powered team to meet with him and to brief him and all kind of thing. And, she didn't consider you in the first place. Well, they're talking about autonomy and Port of Spain. Port of Spain is treated Tobago like if it's the bastard child, and we are a ward of Trinidad. She met with who she met with. They took the decision to go and set up the radar in Tobago and whatever else they set up. They didn't tell you nothing. They knew eventually somebody would have seen it and would have been brought to your attention, but they didn't care because it just goes to show the 2 seats in Tobago. Anyhow the UNC could neutralize that, they would. They don't really care about Tobago, They don't care. And if that makes Tobago a target, you feel them care? As far as they're concerned, those 2 seats in Tobago are a nuisance. They could fight up in Trinidad, but Tobago is an issue. And if they could get rid of those 2 seats in any way and restrict it to the 39, they would be happy to do it. Now, I am not saying that they're going to put things and cause Tobago to be targeted or whatever. But why didn't put it in Trinidad? Why didn't put it in Trinidad? Why Tobago? What's so special about Tobago? And since all they're saying that this is just about narco trafficking and it's to stop the trafficking and so on and all of these different things, Jamaica has more issues with drugs than we do. Jamaica has more issues with murder than we do, right? They've already crossed the 600 mark for murders for this year already, and we still have a whole month to go. But this year is still a better year for them than previous years where they normally record over 1,000 murders a year. It's the first time, it seems, in over a decade that they are going to record less than 1,000 murders. So it seems their situation is more dire than ours. They have a bigger drug problem than we do. So why isn't the US setting up a radar system in Jamaica to help them? More US citizens go to Jamaica than they come to Trinidad in terms of tourists and so on. So you should be more concerned about Jamaica and the protection of US citizens. Why they're not setting up in Jamaica? Why they're setting up in Barbados? What about Dominica and Guyana? How come they're not going there? Why is only Tobago? Answer that question. But you see, they could only fool somehow there. Some of you UNC supporters, every single thing that your government does and says with this, you all try to defend it and make it look as if the PNM stupid and the PNM supporters this and that. A missile could drop in all your yard, explode, blow up all your house. You all will be lying down under rubble, missing a leg, missing an arm, missing your left eye, right? And 4 fingers, and would still be defending this government and say, well, you know, the citizens don't need to know. The citizens don't need to know. And it's national security. All that stupidness. Seeing that, you know, you could be lying under rubble and would still be defending that nonsense. But if it was Keith Rowley, same people talking about Rowley signed the SOFA agreement, and Rowley signed the SOFA agreement, and it's Rowley who gave the US the ability to be able to come and to launch operations on land because he signed the SOFA agreement. That's all they're singing, right? But you're defending Prasad Bisesa, who did plenty more than sign a SOFA agreement, which she signed, I think, back in 2013. And what this was just what the PNM did last year was simply a renewal, right, of what was previously signed. But all you take Dr. Rowley to the cleaners, rake him over the coals for signing SOFA, and because of what you all think that allows. And Mrs. Prasad Bisesa has allowed a lot more. But I'm not hearing you all saying, but Kamala allowed them to do this. Only Rowley and Rowley and Rowley. Anyway. So Kishan is saying, we Tobagonians, well, it's Tobagonians, not Tobagoians, all right? Dolema had a draw from a red pen. Voting TPP, Fali, all the way, blue is the code. Well, good for y'all. Go ahead and vote for Fali. All right? That is your democratic right, so to do. Special thanks to the UNC for the 10% because PNM never gave us anything. Well, if you are entitled to the 10%, Kishan, I'm going to tell you, when you get your back pay, all right, here what to do. Tell the paymaster, you see this personal allowance of 90,000 that you all using to calculate how much tax I have to pay on this back pay. You see that increase that Rowley gave, or do you say he gave you nothing? Where you see that 50% increase in personal allowance from 60,000 to 90,000 that Rowley and Imbert put in place. I want you all to calculate the taxes on my back pay based on a personal allowance of 60,000 because I don't want the 30,000 increase that Rowley gave me, right? I don't want it. So calculate my back pay and the taxes based on a personal allowance of 60,000 and take plenty more of my back pay in taxes. Let the rest of them who support Rowley and the PNM, let them get the benefit of a 90,000 personal allowance so they pay less taxes on their back pay. And if it is the new salary, puts you in, well, it will put you in a higher bracket. But here what? Tell them if your new salary takes you to 7,000 or 7,500, tell them tax your new salary at $5,000 a month personal allowance, not 7,500. So every dollar that you get over 5,000, you will pay tax on of 25 cents, Kishan. All right? Because Rowley ain't give you nothing. So you don't want the tax benefit that Rowley give you. Give it back. Go and tell the paymaster you don't want it. Stupid. I feel so in a Super C. I feel I will do that. You need a timeout. Folks, we'll chat again soon. Slimy Show says if there is no war, this government in some problem. So true. All righty, folks. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, your week if you don't hear from me. And we will chat again probably, if not Tuesday, Sunday. All right? Sammy Shaw will look out for your live later. Take care.